Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski. Corey was the best-selling author of 2 books, Let Trump Be Trump and Trump's Enemies. You can buy them. Just go right to our website, buy those books. Got to read them. Trump's campaign manager in 2015 and 2016 engineered the biggest upset in the history of politics. And we believe he's going to run for the U.S. Senate in New Hampshire. And as the president said, if you run, you'll be a U.S. Senator. You will win. And he's joining us now. Hey, Corey, great to have you, man.
Good morning, John. I'm sorry about last night, my friend. I know you are waiting with bated breath to celebrate your Astros, but there's a new day ahead of us.
Well, that's it. I just got a text from my son in Clarksdale, Mississippi. He teaches high school there. My older son, Jack, and basketball coach, and he just texted me and said, hey, Dad, I am so confident we're going to win tonight. So I feel better now. Hey, let me give a shout-out to Corey. I want to thank Corey Lewandowski for getting World Series tickets for my wife Ann, myself, and Joseph on Friday night. We went to the game, Corey. That was so nice of you. The seats were beautiful. We had such a good time. It was such a great experience. We never would have been able to do that. And Corey, our whole family wants to say thank you so much.
Corey is the man.
He really
Team
is.
Corey,
John,
all the way.
John, you guys know this. Martha, you know it. John, you know this. I'm a man of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's why I probably don't fit in well in Washington, D.C., because I'm going to do it. But, John, I told you, if the Astros make it to the series, and you guys had to get out of New York, which wasn't an easy task, but you made it out of New York, you got to the series, and I said, hey, it's my obligation, my duty, my privilege to do that. So I'm glad you guys get to enjoy it. Plus, you get to see a win in enemy territory, John.
It was fantastic, and thank you for doing that, Corey Lewandowski. All right, lots to talk about today. Let's talk about impeachment and the impeachment vote coming up tomorrow on Halloween of all times. Some people saying Nancy Pelosi has caved, but when you look at what the vote is going to be, it's kind of half-baked. I mean, they don't really get to subpoena people. The Republicans have very limited power. Adam Schiff is calling all the shots. And basically, the Democrats who are going to vote for it in Trump districts are going to say, I'm just voting for transparency. What say you?
Well, John, it's a great argument if you are a Democrat in those 31 congressional districts that Donald Trump won that are now being held by Democrats after the 2018 election, because their answer is going to be exactly what you just said. We need to open up this process. This should be conducted in the eyes of the public. We need to have witnesses come and testify. We're not voting for impeachment. We're voting for the process to be open so there's transparency and people can see it. But the truth is, under the 2 previous occasions, both in 1974 and in 1998, under Nixon and Clinton respectively, this was done through the House Judiciary Committee, which is the primary committee with responsibility on this. And once a vote was cast for the impeachment, it allowed Bill Clinton at that time to have his counsel in the room and asking questions of these witnesses. Because they're not doing that, because they're running it through the much smaller House Intelligence Committee, which means not the 42 or 44 members of the House Judiciary Committee, but a 22-member committee that Nancy Pelosi controls 100% of, this is going to give them the opportunity to make those recommendations of articles of impeachment without the due process that this president should be entitled to, as every other person who has gone through this has been entitled to. This is a total sham. We know that. And now what we're seeing is they're continuing to call witnesses without showing us the full transcript of what those witnesses are saying. It's a total sham, and they should do what they did to me, which is put everyone in front of the camera.
That's right.
Let everybody sit there and see what happens, and then let the American people decide.
Exactly.
After I testified, they knew the fake Russia collusion narrative was dead, and they were embarrassed how dishonest those people are in Washington.
I think that's the ticket. That's open transparency. You ask the questions, you answer them, you put it in front of the American public, and they decide. Obviously, when you went, they decided that, okay, this thing was a complete and utter sham, and you embarrassed the whole thing.
That's right.
And that's why we haven't heard a peep out of Jerry Nadler, Corey.
Well, John, you're right, and your listeners know this. They offered me to come behind closed doors and do this. First, I said I would come and volunteer. Then these clowns subpoenaed me. Then they brought in this other guy who wasn't even a staff member to ask me questions. And I said, we're doing this in front of God and everybody, in front of public. Let's put this on the cameras. Let's go. By the way, at much criticism potentially to me for doing that. They said, no, we'll do it behind closed doors. But I know how dishonest these people are and that they would leak selective parts of my testimony. So I demanded it be done in public. And after I did it in public, Jerry Nadler and his band of merry men were trying to protect themselves from left-wing opponents in their primaries. Nancy Pelosi pulled this investigation away from them because they know that they're not capable of doing this properly, and that if they were to have the responsibility of this, the American people would realize just how inept members of Congress really are.
What about the leakers that are in there? You know, the president said during the al-Baghdadi capture, he said, look, I didn't tell Nancy Pelosi, I didn't tell Adam Schiff because I was afraid it would get leaked and put our troops in harm's way. I mean, that kind of went by the media, like nobody made a big deal of that, or all they did was whine about the fact that he cut Pelosi out of the loop, she demanded a hearing or whatever. But look, these leaks are real. And do you really believe that if somebody leaked this to Adam Schiff or to Pelosi, that one of their staff members wouldn't have leaked it to potentially deny the United States a big victory or some positive news for Trump, even though, you know, he simply authorized it? I mean, is that not out of the realm of possibility? I wouldn't have told him either.
You know, John, I think what we have seen in this highly partisan, broken Washington, D.C., is if you say something's blue, they say it's black. If you say it's white, they say it's red. And so they have Congress and Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi have their own vested interest of destroying this president, regardless of what's best for the country. And I would hope that they would never do something that would put our men and women in uniform, particularly our special forces, in harm's way. And if you listened to what members of the mainstream media said was, well, he notified Russia, he notified Turkey. Well, hey, stupids, we were flying over restricted airspace. And when you put 8 Black Hawk helicopters or whatever they had to do in restricted airspace, and you don't notify those countries that you're flying over, maybe they're shooting us down. So that's why we had to do it. And so, look, the media wanted to focus on the fact that the president had to have international coordination with other countries so that we could execute this very important mission. That's what they focus on. Just like when we go into Mogadishu or we had to go in and get Osama bin Laden, we had to notify other countries that we were going to be flying over them in order to go do these missions. But that's what the mainstream media focused on. Donald Trump thanked Russia and Turkey. Well, yeah, he thanked them because we coordinated from a national security perspective to make sure that those helicopters could arrive and depart safely. And all they want to say is, well, he didn't tell Nancy Pelosi. He had no obligation to tell Nancy Pelosi. And what we have seen is that she was briefed afterwards, but we have seen too many leaks coming out of Washington, particularly from Adam Schiff and his committee.
Unbelievable. I tell you what, Martha, just listening to Corey,
yes.
Can't you envision
He fires me up.
Can't you envision him in the U.S. Senate?
Yes.
I mean, really.
He fires me up.
We got to find a way to get him there. I know
Absolutely.
he's still thinking about running, but Corey, you're just saying all this, and I'm saying absolutely right.
I'm shaking my head.
It is dumb that they're even saying, well, they notified Russia. Well, of course they did. They control the area's airspace, you morons. Right. Unbelievable. All right. Corey, let's get, obviously we're fans. Let's get to...
huge fans.
Huge. Let's get to news headlines today. Mick Mulvaney, Chief of Staff, not told about the al-Baghdadi raid. He's sitting at home in South Carolina. Nobody told him. I read that and I say to myself, I think they're going to replace him. I mean, I don't know how you would not tell your Chief of Staff what is going on. They cut him out of the loop, or maybe he was home. But I don't think he's long for this world. He's just acting Chief of Staff. Is there a replacement? What say you?
Well, look, I have to say, John, in full disclosure, I'm a huge Mick Mulvaney fan. I believe that he has been the best Chief of Staff that this president has had. And just for 1 second, and I don't need to go on a tantrum here or a diatribe, but for John Kelly to say that he told President Trump that if he hired a yes man, he would be impeached is just a complete fallacy. Okay, John didn't resign from being the Chief of Staff. John was fired. Okay, number one. Number two, John's very bitter about that. And number three, look, John, if he had any political skills whatsoever in his body, which clearly he had none of, he would have done more to help in the 2018 elections so that we could have saved some of the House seats and made sure that there wasn't an impeachment inquiry. So for him to attack Mick Mulvaney as a yes man, I think is very disingenuous and really is below, the dignity of what John Kelly should have. So, look, I'm a big Mick Mulvaney fan. I like Mick a lot. I've known Mick a long time. I think it is a very, very difficult job. And if the reports are true, I don't know if they are, that Mick wasn't involved in the decision matrix before this was executed, I'm sure there was a reason for that. And look, some of the president's closest advisors work even in the country. If Mick Mulvaney was in North Carolina with his family, Jared Kushner was overseas. Obviously, this is a very small, very tight-knit operation. And when you look at what's come out of the National Security Council lately, specifically the leaks, the people who can't be trusted, if I were the president, I'd be making sure that every major decision like this is buttoned down tight, and as small of a group of people as possible would have the information to ensure that our men and women in uniform who are in forward areas, who are deployed for situations and operations like this, are safe, and I would keep that information very, very tight.
All right, so look, he was home in South Carolina with his family, so maybe they felt, he's got a family thing going on. We're not going to get him back up here, and if he did come back up, then people might think there's something going on because he had planned time with his family in South Carolina. So that might be the simple explanation. And we had Jason Miller on earlier who said basically they really kept this very tight because they were afraid that, somebody would get wind of it or, why might Mulvaney be flying back on a Friday night when he was already down there. So you got all that stuff going on. So I can see where you're going with it. Okay, Steve Bannon and company do a war room here on my network, John Fredericks Radio Network, 9 to 10 every day, live radio, no nonsense. And I asked Hogan Gidley yesterday, I said, Hogan, shouldn't you guys have a war room in the White House, hire some people to get better messaging? And he said, no, we're not going to do that because the president didn't do anything wrong. He's completely innocent. We don't need that. And I'm like, yeah, but recent polling has shown that 50% of Americans are starting to believe this. They want to impeach and removed from office. So my question to the guy that ran the campaign and pulled the biggest upset in history with like 7 people full time up until he was almost the nominee. He had a handful of people there in New York. Should Trump have a war room on impeachment in that White House?
Well, look, John, I don't know if it has to be in the White House because it could be run from outside the building. But I do think that forward-facing messaging is very, very important because what we know, and I agree with Hogan in this regard, the president committed no crimes. No high crimes nor misdemeanors did the president commit. This is completely a political witch hunt to go after this president because they couldn't beat him at the ballot box. Don't forget, it was obstruction, collusion. Now it's impeachment. They know, and we've heard this directly from the Democrats, he can't be beaten in 2020, so we have to impeach him. And so I don't think there's a criminal component to this. I'm fully convinced of that. But I do think you win this war against these Democrats on messaging, on the public understanding what's really going on. Just like Donald Trump did almost single-handedly as it came to the Russian collusion narrative, which we knew was all a farce from the beginning. This impeachment, inquiry is a complete farce. And I do think having messaging points so that individuals, surrogates, media, etc., can get some pushback for the false narratives that we're seeing coming out of Adam Schiff, the Democrats in Congress, and some members of the mainstream media is important because I think forward-facing communication is always best. When you're on the offense, you're not playing defense. And look, you know me, John, I'm an offensive kind of guy.
Well, during the campaign when you started, I mean, we had a daily call every day. We had a message of the day. It was clear. It was succinct. Everybody was on the same page. And that's how we were able to roll. And I absolutely think they need that. If you look at the Vindon, the Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindon testimony yesterday, you had some Republicans criticizing his allegiance to Ukraine. You had some of them saying, well, he shouldn't have showed up in military uniform. That was a sideshow. That was for the media. He shouldn't have done that. He should have come in a business suit like he comes in to the National Security Council. You had another group of people like me saying, hey, wait a minute. whatever we saw is his opinion. He simply doesn't like the president's America First policy, foreign policy agenda, so he's trying to single-handedly overturn it with the other unelected bureaucrats. Nobody voted for him, so you had three different messages coming out.
Yeah, John, look, I think part of it is you have to remember how much of a disruptive force Donald Trump has been in Washington, D.C. The military-industrial complex hates the fact that Donald Trump wants to bring our men and women in uniform home unless there is an absolute reason that they should be forward deployed. Don't forget, this is an entity, the military-industrial complex, that makes hundreds of billions of dollars selling weapons and making sure that ongoing wars continue. And this president pledged, and it's fulfilling the pledge, to bring our men and women home. But the other part of this, John, as it relates to the Ukraine specifically, and I think what the president was asking, and I haven't read the transcript because it hasn't been fully released, is if the Ukraine was involved in the 2016 election or Joe Biden, why don't we want to know that answer? I don't understand what the pushback is of saying from the president, hey, let's find out if you guys did anything as it related to the 2016 election. Hey, work with Attorney General Barr, work with U.S. Attorney Durham. There's nothing wrong with that. This is all trumped up, and believe me, we know it. We've known it from day one, and I've criticized this administration for it from the very beginning. They were not ready to go on day one. They had holdover people inside a number of these agencies that did not support the president, that still don't support the president, and we are now seeing them come out time and time and time again. And I'm not making disparaging comments about any one particular individual, but by not having the right personnel in place in the administration, including to this day, there are people who are subverting the president's America First agenda because they don't like the fact that he wants to fundamentally transform the way Washington, D.C. works.
How did the president end up hiring all these never-Trumpers? How did this happen?
John, look, it baffles my mind to think that there are people, look, Corey Lewandowski, Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, Dave Bossie, David Urban, Matt Schlapp. There's a lot of people who are with this president from day one, from day one, the very second, who never went inside the administration. And I think some of us do a very good job on the outside supporting him. But then I see all these people who are at the State Department, who are at the National Security Council, who actively campaigned against this president.
Right.
Not just, hey, didn't vote for him. They were actively campaigning against him. Look, Elliot Abrams at the State Department actively wrote a letter against Donald Trump saying he should not be in the government. He isn't qualified to be the United States. And the guy works at our State Department. How did that happen, John?
I don't know.
Who's making those decisions? And look, I'm not criticizing Mike Pompeo, but I question how it is that there are so many good people who supported this president either through the election or continue to do so, that would have loved the opportunity to go into some parts of the government that were never given that opportunity. And a number of these people who hate this guy continue to serve in his administration. It baffles my mind, and it really drives a lot of conservatives who've been with Donald Trump crazy about it.
It does. It drives those that were with the president from the beginning, like you and I. It drives us absolutely bat crap crazy that all of these never-Trumpers have jobs of influence and positions of influence in the White House. How this happened, you trace it back. I know some of us thought bringing Reince Priebus in, but I'll tell you how it happened because I asked the question. I learned a long time ago, you never ask a question if you don't know what the answer is. Right, Corey? Here's the answer. And I'm telling you this, and I've told it to you before. Biggest mistake President Trump made day one after he won that election was he should have made Corey Lewandowski chief of staff. Had he done that, none of this, not a bit of it would have ever happened. You would still be there today. Things would look totally different. You would have people in there supporting his agenda if Corey Lewandowski was chief of staff.
Loyalists.
Absolutely. Well, he would have brought in talented people that believed in moving the agenda forward.
Right.
He should have been the chief of staff. That was the plan. And had he done that, this wouldn't have happened. Now, it didn't happen. We can't reverse history. Going forward, I'm almost out of time. Are you any closer on your decision for running for U.S. Senate in New Hampshire because, Corey, if you run, you're going to be the next senator from New Hampshire.
We're all in if you run.
No, John, you're so good, and Martha, you're so good. And look, I think if I run, I do win, right? We saw today that Don Baldock's campaign manager, I think, was fired or quit, so that campaign's kind of imploding right now. I don't know why. Nobody's raising any money up here in New Hampshire. And if I run, I win. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. For the last 5 years of my life, my priority has been to help Donald Trump be successful, first as running for president and now as the president of the United States. It is so important for the direction of our country that Donald Trump is reelected in 2020. I want to do everything humanly possible to make that happen. I'm going to spend some time with the president early next week, traveling. I look forward to that. We've got Vice President Pence coming up to New Hampshire a week from tomorrow to officially fill out the paperwork to put the Trump-Pence team back on the New Hampshire ballot. I'll be with the vice president there. So I'm going to continue to talk to the president, the vice president, about what the best role is for me to ensure their reelection in 2020, because to me that's the priority. And if that's where I have to go, I will. But, John, look, if I run for this U.S. Senate race, I'm going to win. I travel the state all the time. People are so tired of Jeanne Shaheen being an absent U.S. Senator, getting rich while in office, supporting sanctuary cities, not having any signature legislation. The people of New Hampshire deserve better. And if I run, I'll tell you this, Jeanne Shaheen has never seen an opponent like me before. I will take the fight directly to her, and I will be the next U.S. Senator from New Hampshire.
Corey Lewandowski, the next senator from New Hampshire.
Senator Lewandowski.
And if you run, we're taking our war room operation from Bannon's bunker to Windham, New Hampshire.
100%.
We're going, Corey.
100%.
We're taking the whole operation there. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Corey, thanks for being with us, man.
And the vice president's coming to Virginia Beach. We hope Corey's coming with him.
Corey, all right, he'll be in Virginia.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right, Corey, thank you for being with us.